Meanwhile, Rival 250Bs, a T57, a Batchat, a 113, and a 215B, as well as that RU-251 of Pub Whisper. Meanwhile, Pub Whisper just kind of making a scout through the north, and that Tier 9 bat for Deja Vu being very aggressive very early.
We could see this either work out for Deja Vu or fail miserably. And to be quite honest, it's kind of neither right now.
Pub Whisper looking around in the south. Does take
Pub
some
Whisper
damage.
taking some damage already as Chase, I was going to say sneaks his way onto cap, but he literally just ran over some buildings there. Still a sneak technically. Pub Whisper almost dead.
Took a lot of damage from the Tier 9 bat, and the Tier 9 bats just popped into that C4 cubby. Meanwhile, the rest of the team of Rival just pushing across through that courtyard, and they will be on top of Deja Vu here pretty soon.
Oh, if you look at the setup, though, there's absolutely nobody across the A, B, or C lines to really stop this cap pressure, although it is just one tank. Now, too, the Tier 9 Batchat there has realized that they can put some pressure, and that's going to be Wally Whiff and Chase Potato. Executus is dueling right now with Harmless. Harmless is taking damage from elsewhere as well.
The problem is no one's in position to reset.
No one
for
is
Rival.
in position whatsoever. This is really bad for Rival. Executus is going to end up taking out Harmless, but he's still quite a ways away to go with only 15 seconds left.
Where's the reset going to come from? They don't have any guns in position with only 10 seconds left.
Oh no, Chase Potato is going to get shot. Nice, Unknown One finding that, but there's still Wally Whiff on the other side. They have no vision of him whatsoever.
That HE shell coming in there
And
from that
Dergel
113.
going to take out Pub Whisper.
That HE reset, I talked about this earlier in the broadcast, using the HE shells to guarantee the resets. That's the only thing that kept Rival from being capped out right now.
Right, and I mean, it worked, but they just lost Executives because of that.
And now Deja Vu are down by about 2,000 HP. They are down a gun, and they need to find a solution here fast. He-63 just losing about 1,000 HP between that grill and the T-57.
Goodness. Social Flaws needs to be careful, not too much HP, and there's going to be two tanks that he does. I don't know if he knows Commander J is up there in the T-57, but he definitely knows Unknown One is there. My Little Putin finding flak. And there's Wally Whiff taking out E63, and Rival is going to go ahead and lose this first battle. That was really Commander J finding Wally Whiff, but again, that opening play there from Rival where they almost had no vision whatsoever to take that reset, that was so off-putting.
Well, I like the play out of Deja Vu to be very, very aggressive in the north. Not just to take the cap, but they pushed that Batchat all the way over to C4. And so all of a sudden, C5 in that little cubby right there.
Right.
And so once he was there, they knew that there was nothing left in the north.
There, right.
So the rest of Deja Vu could reposition to be ready for some sort of south play coming out of Rival. And they kept the cap pressure on. They made Rival have to run the gauntlet to get back to get the resets. And if it wasn't for the HE shell from Unknown One, they would have been capped out then and there.
That would have ended even faster. Yeah, I mean, they still lost the battle. And that was really good recognition, by the way, from, I believe it was Wally Whiff in the Batchat Tier 9, that as soon as he realized that there was no one there, once he was set up at C5, like he said, in that little square, he just charged right to the cap.
Yep. So as soon as he realized that RU had gone away, he, what's the best player right now? We know they're in the south. Well, we need to cause cap pressure. Which gun's free to be able to get on the cap? We need the rest of them to screen.
It was Wally.
Wally in the Batchat was right there, so he drove, got on cap, and that really started turning the screws and putting that pressure just a little bit tighter for Deja Vu.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Rival, I mean, it can't be the way you want to start. Now, they can definitely come back. I mean, it's just one game. But as far as, mentalities go, I almost want to say Rival kind of needed that.
Yep, Milo Putin does put up 3,800 damage, and Dergel in that Gorilla 15 able to do 3,100 damage. Social Flaws also doing a pretty good job that round, but looking down at this bottom page, The real story, Pub Whisperer getting caught out, not able to do anything. And Harmless also in that bad chat, only able to get through 4 shots and only had 1 connection, really.
Yeah. So top damage for Rival was actually Commander J in the T-57 Heavy doing 2,300 damage. So not bad on him, but it was a really weird situation. I haven't really seen that so far.
Well, when you push around south, you're trying to make sure that they don't take the middle cap. Is essentially what you're going for. You're saying, all right, we're going to pick one of these caps to make sure that we defend it and that there is just no pressure on that cap at all. And so instead of doing the north cap, which a lot of teams do, they said, all right, we're going to make sure that we have that south cap. So they made that push around. They took control of it. If the team did push into that 2 cap, they were right then and they had those crossfires already established.
Sure.
And it could have been over. However, the problem is they didn't go for the middle cap. They went around outside. They opened up the angles. They got the cap pressure going. And then at that point, once they realized there was nothing in the north for Rival, they just said, all right, well, now come and get us. We know which direction you're coming for.
Let's just roll them there.
You have a grill you have to push into. You have some Tier 9 bats, some 215Bs and 50Bs. You just have to make a decision and just push through them, and Rival paid the prices.
Running the gauntlet, yeah, and they absolutely paid for it.
We are on to battle number 2, and the lineup's coming in: 2 T-57s, 2 T-15Bs, a 50B, a 1390, a 1390, a 113, and an RU-251. Meanwhile, Rival coming in with 2 T-15Bs, 2 50Bs, a T-57.
Okay, so...
it's a regular bat chat and an RU-251.
I got excited.
Well, the first time we saw a bat chat already
That's what I'm saying. I've never seen a bat chat already, a 155 in the Gold League. We've seen a Lurian 155, sure, but not the bat chat. That's the big boy.
Yeah, well, the Tier 9 is not bad. It is a consistent fire version. Has a pretty good arc. Decent reload. Doesn't hit super hard, but hard enough. And then the 155-58, the Tier 10, which you're most likely referring to, the 4-shot autoloader artillery. Very nasty little piece of machinery, probably being able to just pump out that much damage. Meanwhile, Commander J looking for some shots in the south. So we're sitting here talking about artillery, not even involved in this game.
Sorry.
And just looking at it, Rival just kind of setting up, and they're ready for a south push. So they set up and did a south push, and they're setting up ready to receive one if that's what the team wants to do. But Deja Vu are just kind of spread out. They have the RU-251 sitting kind of passive up at A4, opting not to try to get Chase up into that climb, maybe whether it's just become too predictable, or they want to leave him where they can kind of flex around. He's just going to be sitting there passive, trying to light that B8 cross, and he most likely will spot Pub Whisperer here in just a moment.
Pub Whisperer is mostly just scouting here. He's not going to be getting onto cap. Just trying to drive around, see what he can find.
And these 215Bs are going to start to creep in the middle here. And now Rival are kind of posturing like they're going to try to really put some cap pressure on that north cap. To keep an eye on, though, if that cap pressure does come out in the north, judging by the response here out of Deja Vu, those 215Bs could be isolated pretty easily. Not a whole lot going on.
No, this is a very stagnant defense, and to be quite honest, a very stagnant offense from Rival.
Now, something to keep an eye on here is this 113.
Meanwhile, Chase still trying to solo climb. Sorry, Chase, I love you. But that's like the 4th time he's missed that.
So that 113 all the way down at J4. There was one word that came to mind to describe that bush right there, but I did not say it for those, and some of you will pick up on that. That is a rather, let's go with cheesy bush this time. He'll have pretty good intel in the south there. He'll see if anything comes around, if they do make that play through the south. However, it looks like Deja Vu are actually going to back out. They'd committed that 113 pretty far in the south. Decided against it, though. They've pulled him back. And they're just leaving the T-57s down there in the south. Interesting tank to leave off that far on a wide flank. T-57 not being the quickest of the heavy tanks. So leaving it as a tank that has to drive a far distance at a short notice, or could potentially, depending on what Rival does, is could come back to haunt them. Milo Putin just lining up some shots here down the 4 line, but not going to find anything.
And Rival kind of making a play here. They're going to be moving most of their tanks south. All right. Well, speaking, you know what? Let's find out exactly what they're doing with the listen in on Rival, James.
All right, I want to check that line, or I want to go up the slope there. I can check that 3.
I'll just push around her.
Yeah.
Good damage.
Check this corner first. Shit.
Alright, I'm going up. In a second here.
What was that on them?
I'm probably at 50B.
Oh.
Yeah, there they are.
Was it 57?
Yeah.
Both 57s on one.
Okay. We slide in. They're pulling back. They're
Okay.
probably reloading. Slide up.
113 fired.
So,
Very cool, calm, and collected, though, on the team of Rival right now.
yeah, they don't seem like they're panicking. However, 5 minutes left, and they've really not made any progress. So I
That
don't know
also
if I
might
would
be an
that
issue.
calm.
Maybe they're a little too calm and collected here.
Now, one thing I will note, and we've talked about this before when we've brought up the subject of autoloaders and counting shots and whatnot. Even if you just hear right then, they were counting how many shots each fired.
Yeah,
you
that
heard
was
at one
great.
point, both 57s fired 1. And then they were counting, and they said, all right, 57s are backed off. They're probably reloading. So that they're assuming what's happening is they backed off after they fired a couple shots, and they dropped their clip right then and there before they fired through everything. And so it's good communication. Now, the assumption that they could be reloading could have come back to haunt them. So, don't say something you don't know. If you know that the shells are there for sure, then do it. Now, if you're going to make that assumption and say they're probably reloading, make sure you put that probably in there and you don't say they are reloading, because then when your teammates might drive out there thinking he's going to get free shots.
And then he's dead.
So don't be that guy.
Right.
But still good practice to count shots. Just make sure that you know for sure how many. And if you call out they're out, make sure they have indeed fired all 4 of their shots.
I got to say, I'm not a fan of this. 3 minutes and 45 seconds just about, and nothing has transpired for Rival. And Deja Vu, I mean, they don't need to make anything happen.
And now for the 3rd time this match, they're just going to get all their tanks up together, and they're going to flex around to the other side of the map, trying to find some sort of opening, hoping something has changed in the minute and a half that they've been away from this corner.
I don't know. I really just don't know, James. Finally, we might see a little bit of action here as the E63 and Wallywiff are going to see each other. Executives trying to cross that corner. I believe he was just tracked. Or his driver was killed, excuse me.
They will find social flaws. However,
Nice.
HP's still in favor of Deja Vu. Ever so slightly. Not anymore, actually. In a matter of seconds, changes back and forth.
A lot of damage has already come on to Team Deja Vu, and now Rival is taking the trade with Dergil and Change getting focused down by Unknown One, Flak, and Commander J. This is a positive situation for Rival here. Flak gonna go for the ram. Oh no, he's just gonna go for the kill. Probably the easiest kill of his life right there. 63 still firing shots away, and this one is looking like it's gonna go in favor of Rival. Chase Potato cleaning up Executus. Still, though, it's going to be very tough for Deja Vu, if even possible at all.
And they should clean up this round. There are 3 guns still alive for Deja Vu. Rivals still have 6 up. They do have a good bit of crew member damage there. 2 missing drivers and a dead gunner for Pub Whisper. So both those tanks down on low on HP. Only 2 minutes left to work with. And they are going to opt to start capping out that 2 cap.
Chase Potato, though, is dead. I was going to say he was making his way towards the 2 cap, but down he goes. This My Little Putin here is going to get cleaned up by Coffee Thief and Commander J. And there it is. All right, so life out of Rival. And, we did kind of criticize them for being a little too cool, calm, and collected, but when they made their play, they really made it count.
I feel like they have some idea of what their plan is. They kind of go, all right, let's do this, and let's look for this, and just find that right opportunity. But they're being so selective and just so, I don't know, I can't even come up with a good word to describe it, but they're just so, they're just waiting for that right opportunity. They're waiting for the other team to do that right thing to give them that little opportunity to get in there. And that's what happened. Deja Vu, with all those shifts that Rival were doing back and forth, Deja Vu was constantly trying to read it and kind of shifting a few little tanks from one alley to another, trying to predict it. Yeah. And then Rival was able to drive in there, get social flaws for free, and then it kind of just snowballed from there. And, looking at the damage here, E63 able to do almost 4,200 damage, or does do 4,200 damage, while Milo Putin in the opposite 50B does 3,400.
Yep. And then Commander J and Flak. Commander J did a really good job of coming around and helping his teammates with flanks and just finishing off many of the tanks of Deja Vu. And then, unfortunately, Harmless, Change, Chase Potato, and Social Flaws all just falling very short and taking shots early on, getting destroyed.
Yeah, definitely. And meanwhile, Social Flaws, he got caught out there, unfortunately, by all those autoloaders, the Batshot T50Bs that pushed around. Right. So he wasn't really able to get into that fight a whole lot. However, up next is going to be Mines.
What kind of Mines are we going to see?
Now, Mines is a map which I don't think we've seen Deja Vu play a whole lot this season. We've seen a good bit out of it out of Rival.
We have.
Especially both matches versus Apex. We saw them play on Mines, and both times were pretty much straight losses for Apex or for Rival. So you got to hope that they've kind of either changed things up or that...
You could almost argue that's Apex as well, though.
It is Apex. However, you got to remember all the strats Deja Vu will have looked over.
Sure.
You got to count. So
sure.
What have they done? What have they done different? Will they be able to bring out anything that Deja Vu hasn't seen yet? These are some big points for Rival to be picking up right now. If they can get anything out of this match, that's going to be huge. Because you got to think that of the other three teams down there in the bottom between High, CD, and 07, you got to think that this is a match where they're not going to get any points out of.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and head right into the second map of the series between Deja Vu and Rival.
Mines, a small summertime map with lots of hills, rocks and other cover. The teams start the battle in the usual locations, but the base locations are different. One is located in the bottom part of the village and the other one is in the water. One of the key objectives is the center hill. That's why the teams will often select fast vehicles and tanks with strong turrets for cover.
Right, it is all tied up between the two teams. Deja Vu is going to be bringing an E100 and then 4 Batchats, a TVP, and an M4043. So we'll see. I think the most successful map of SPG this season so far has definitely been Mines.
Definitely, and right off the bat, Rival are going to take the hill with their Batchats. And while Deja Vu are setting up in that pretty standard defense, they will get that Batchat up on the hill there. We'll have to take a look at who that is. I don't believe it is Harmless. However... looking over here, they will get Milo Putin up there behind the rock at J0. They have Chase Potato sitting back there behind the buildings, so we'll have to see if Pub Whisperer tries to counter battery him at all. Meanwhile, just using Wally to be that passive scout, and look where they've tucked him. They've pushed him all the way around this corner, all the way over towards the east, where our artillery really isn't going to have any shots. The only way he'd be able to find shots on that E100 is if he pushes over towards B0, but that's extremely risky. And
that's not a play that he's going to want to make.
Yeah, now, Rival do have the hill, so it is feasible in some senses. However, still not something I would necessarily want to do. And it looks like Wally's just actually looking for a tank, trying to do that A0 climb. So if they want to do that, they're going to have to eat at least one E100 shell while they do it.
And that's not necessarily what you want to do, because that is a very hard-hitting cannon.
Yep, so we'll have to see what Rival can do to respond. And just because of Deja Vu bringing that E100, they start up on HP by a little over 400. And Commander J is going to shift over here down the one line. Try to get some intel, maybe get some shots from Pub Whisper out down there onto those Batchats. However, they haven't tried using that same climb that we saw earlier from Dark Ninja. Change will get lit, but Commander J does not. He will back off. So Rival just kind of floating around right now, trying to find that same weakness before they're just kind of all spread out. They have Commander J just poking around on the one line, hoping to get some intel, maybe get some shots for that artillery. The TVPs and the Bad Shots working that hill, trying to spot stuff. However, that E100 is the only thing that really get a consistent light on. And the
Change
rest
finally gets lit.
Yeah, but he's so tucked in there. Artillery's never going to find a shot from
I mean,
A1.
but it's really the first tank we've kind of seen lit aside from that E100, which I don't even think has been spotted yet, and that's Wally Whiff.
He has to have been spotted by now within that prox range, unless they're worried.
That's what I'm saying.
About
if anyone's
Chase.
going to be lit, it's going to be Wally.
Yeah, so unless they're worried about Chase hitting anything that lights that E100, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be spotted at this point, essentially. Change peeking out on the one line. Commander J not looking for it. He is sitting in the bush, so I doubt Change will see him, and I don't think Commander J has an angle on him either. Meanwhile, a little bit of splash damage onto Jurgil and that TVP from that artillery. However, only 63 damage, so nothing really to worry about too much.
And again, I mean, this is something we see, because Deja Vu has somewhat been a slower player themselves anyways.
They tend to be pretty slow, but they have such great team play. When they want to make those decisive pushes, they've been able to do it. And that's something that's really helped them so far this season, is being creative and knowing when to be aggressive and when to sit back. And that's something that I just don't know that Rival completely have down at this point. You can clearly tell there's a lot of thought going into their strats, but they're also playing very slow, and they're waiting for the right moment, or dare I say, trying to be just too indecisive, I guess. Not trying to be with it, just are being too indecisive. Right. And they kind of are just sitting here waiting for that exact moment, and they see something that they might be able to.
Oh my goodness! Good night, Executus!
Well, things just got a lot harder for Rival. And wow, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is just pop.
Dead Executus. That sucks. Like, there's nothing else to say about that.
E100 gets the proc sled on the Bad Chat.
That's not even Executus playing bad either. That is just most unfortunate.
Now some will say they should have expected that E100 would be there. They should expect them to take shots at anything that E100
I still
lights.
don't fault that to being Executus. I really don't.
Well, you got a question. Okay, where's that E100 going to be? Just thinking about it. He's going to be on the underside there. Where else could he possibly be in an E100 on mines?
C2.
In a feasible
manner. If he has
manner.
rocket boosters.
In a feasible manner, where
he's
going to
be tucked in somewhere around the G line. I get it.
Maybe like J7, maybe. But like past that, you're going to expect him there. So why even take the risk of getting a tank spotted when you know their team has artillery? And on top of that, with the new boost over there, there's every chance that the tank's boosted.
All right. It's still just a really lame situation for Executus. I feel for him.
Well, I mean, okay, how to say this? Do I feel bad that he just got completely wiped off the face of the map by a single shot?
Sure.
Certainly. Am I sad that an artillery that they know the other team had took a shot at him and connected in that exact spot? Not so much. And E63 just kind of finally moving over towards the 8-9 line village along with the rest of the team. And once again, the clock is all the way down to 3.5 minutes.
Rival is the ones attacking. The problem is now that they're a gun down, so them making some sort of
they're a gun down and 2,000 HP down at this point. And what I have to say is, earlier I talked about making sure that you use all of the time that you need. You have 10 minutes to work with. And so you need to make sure that you get the intel, that you find some answers. And that's just something that Rival haven't done with their time. Yeah, they've been posturing a lot, but I don't feel that they've done enough to really get any sort of solid intel or answers. They will find this E100 for relatively free. The
And
rest
he
of the
should
guns,
be going down while he's taking quite a bit of damage, and there he goes.
And all of a sudden, Deja Vu are down. They did 2,700 HP.
Oh, no, they're not.
And
Chase just eliminates another one. Another one. He's going to take out Flak. Sorry, you were saying?
Now, E100, like we were just talking about, with executives going down because they know the E100's there. Yes.
Oh, wait a second, though. Commander J has had enough of Chase Potato shenanigans, and he's going to take him down, and then My Little Putin is going to fall right after that. Just like that, Rival is now again in the lead. This is a nice change of pace for me with Rival.
So what they've done for the second game in a round now is they've burned the clock down. In a sense, they've essentially put their enemy to sleep and then just picked a moment to just come out and pounce on him. And that's what they've done 2 rounds in a row. It's really what they've done. They've driven back and forth. They've tried to buy as much time as they can. And then once their team's not ready for it, they just explode onto them. They get the free kill on the E100. Last time it was the free kill on the 215B. And they get the kill, they get some momentum, and they're looking pretty good despite losing Executives early.
Yeah,
now, I still feel that Executives shouldn't be dead right now.
Sure.
But the play they made certainly has worked.
And we just got a tweet from @EGP Wonder Chef. What an quote-unquote unfortunate artillery shot on Executives. Indeed, unfortunate. Indeed. It's a word that, man, I find myself using quite a bit. I need to change up the vocabs. There's just a lot of unfortunate things happening in games. I mean, sometimes it just sucks. I don't want to say it that way. Maybe I should.
E63 should be able to find social flaws here in just a moment.
Not with that super armor of the Bat Chat. We just saw 2 bounces. That's another crazy thing. I've seen so many bounces off of Bat Chats this season that I'm starting to think the armor on that tank is great.
That has to do a lot with the penetration mechanics
Yeah,
and just the
and
overall
the
shape of the Bat
I know, but it just shouldn't happen as much as it has.
Oh, absolutely. However, it just has a lot of those really random, obscure angles, and being just sloped to the angles they are. When tanks take a sudden turn one way or another, and the shell hits them, often they'll hit what we call the auto bounce angle, where it just doesn't even do the penetration calculation. It just goes right off.
Yep.
Other times, the angle's so extreme, it just can't penetrate. So, Batchat definitely gets some lucky bounces that probably shouldn't, but once again, that's why tanks are designed the way they are with the different slopes.
So, Rival 2-1 over Deja Vu.
So
I like it. I really like it.
They get the round, and looking at the damage here, nothing too surprising. He's 63 in that 113, able to do 3,500 damage. Commander J also making that push, 3,200 damage.
Chase Potato doing 2342 damage. One of most of that damage coming courtesy of Executus' tank.
Well, 1,800 of it to be exact.
Yes. Not a good situation for him. You argue that, sure, he probably shouldn't have been there. I have Executus' back. I don't think that's necessarily his fault, although I can understand where you're coming from.
Yep. I mean, it's just a matter of, the E100 is going to be there, and there's a thing to point out there. Wally Whip only firing 1 shot in that E100 and
doing no
nothing.
damage.
So, panicking a little bit after maybe taking a little bit of a nap, waiting for Rival to finally make a play. When they did, just wasn't able to get a shot off and got evaporated. But, I mean, I understand that, I'm saying it in a certain way, or maybe making fun of Rival a little bit, but you got to think about it, though. It's almost the same thing. Is they're making sure they burn up the clock. They're using 8 minutes without really showing anything to their team.
Yeah, they're using all the time.
And then they're just going for it. And if it's working to a certain extent, you can't really knock it. So I know I'm sitting here, saying they're putting people to sleep, but if putting people to sleep and then just suddenly exploding on them works.
If it works, it works.
Now here's the next thing.
It's not necessarily, putting them to sleep per se, because they're also positioning and really looking, and they're trying to use the whole map to find every angle and every piece of information they can.
Yep.
So,
But then let's say they start playing some mind games here, and they go, all right, so we've deployed really slow for a couple games
what if they
in a
just
row.
start really fast?
We're going into
Right.
Proc after this next round of mines. I'm going to call it now. I would not be surprised to see some sort of just
Rival
straight up
just
and
explode?
over. And that's something that Rival Simple Tankers originally pioneered on Proc, was just going to that middle ridge and just being super aggressive right off the bat and looking
Sure.
for early damage. It's something they came up with a long time ago, and I would not be surprised to see that come back.
For me,
into
that would
play.
be really neat to see, like, old meets new again. I would love to see that. I like what I'm seeing out of Rival right now. Taking down a team of Deja Vu, for instance, in the series would be a huge confidence booster for them because they really do need it. Especially a team they lost, I believe it was, 5-2 last time they played?
Yeah, Deja Vu beat them 5-2. So
Yeah.
already, starting off better, but they need to maintain form. And one thing I will say is Rival coming in with the rather corny pick of the Crusader SP.
I like what you're doing.
Meanwhile, the 215V, 2 TVPs, and 3 Bat Chats. Meanwhile, Deja Vu, a 113, 3 Bat Chats, 2 TVPs, and an RU 251.
I get the purpose of the Crusader. I know exactly why it's there. It's an arty that's... Oh my goodness, Unknown One, where did your HP go? Executus, no, he's about to fall.
And Social Flaws might pick them up here in a second. Most of these Bat Chats already having to reload, or they're just getting off their clip now.
No, I think actually... Oh my goodness, so much damage onto Rival already. Wally Whip going to take out Unknown One. Commander J is about dead. Executus is one shot away from the afterlife.
Executus will go down here.
Oh,
and
that is a horrific start for Rival.
A little Crusader SP firing off a shot for 94 damage.
I feel like every time he gets a shot, too, it's like, yeah. There's not a lot going on there. I was just about to say, I get what it's there for. It's meant to reset. I just don't really like that strategy. I don't.
With Mines being such a small map, it can shoot up onto the hill and get some shots. So yeah, you can kind of chip away at the enemy. However, it doesn't hit as hard as, say,
Doesn't
an
really-
M4043.
Well, obviously.
Now it does have the high rate of fire, as E63 does
This is over.
go down.
This is just over.
So Rival trying to do that whole change of pace that I was just talking about, and Deja Vu having none of it.
No, and very quickly, Deja Vu has tied it 2-2. You can do a flag. No, we can't. Okay, all right, moving forward.
That was a pretty fast round.
What do we even say? Rival tried exactly what you said. I like that they tried it. I don't like that they got executed trying it. But I mean, it's tough. It's very tough. They wanted to be aggressive. They had played slow the last 2 games of which they won. Changing it up would have been a good strategy, especially if, Deja Vu was expecting that. Unfortunately, Deja Vu came just as aggressive as Rival did, and because of that, Rival, they paid for it.
Yep, and looking at the damages here, Wally coming up there with 2,500, Social Falls now 113 and 2,200, Durgel and change in those TVPs 1,700, 1,500, and that's where all of Unknown One's HP went early on. That those TVPs got in position to punish the hill early, and they were able to rifle off those shots
so fast.
And that's why I've talked before about how the TVPs have really changed the meta on this map. It comes down to those TVPs with those 20-second reloads. They're actually loaded by the time people are crossing that hill entrance. Before with the Bat Chats, and before that, the 1390s. With such a long reload, they would never be loaded in time for those hill engagements. And so for a while, we did see T69s used a lot because their reload was so fast. And this is back talking 754, and before that, even 742. Back in the days, almost 4 years ago now. It's crazy to think it's been going on that long. But they'd bring T69s because they could get to the hill before anything else loaded. They could get early damage on 1390s and other stuff. And keep in mind, this is back before they even added the RU-251 or the 254 lightweight into the game.
Okay.
So they didn't have those consistent fire options. You had the WZ-132, which back then was not as good as it currently is. So everyone went for the 1390s. And meta kind of evolved a little bit. Then the T69 heat shells got nerfed. And then we went back to seeing, more 1390s.
So lots happened.
And it's just kind of gone back and forth. And then we moved to tier 10. And then we saw originally a lot of T22s and 140s. And there was a lot of open brawls on that on the hill entrance. And then the TVP came along and just completely changed all that.
Oh, well, we'll have to see Rival's response. It is now tied 2-2 as we head into the third map of Deja Vu versus Rival.
Prokhorovka, one of the first maps in the game. Teams start at the regular spawn points as they do in standard battles. Bases are separated from each other by the railway, so the defending team has to choose whether to send their vehicles to the left side, playing them in the centre, or to the right of the railway, occupying the hill and a part of the village. The attacking team usually attacks the first base. However, the teams often go for face-to-face confrontations, 7-on-7, in the hilly terrain at the centre. That's why both teams frequently use vehicles with good gun depression angles and sturdy turrets.
Coming in here, lineups for Deja Vu, a 113, 4 Object 140s, a Batchat, and an RU-251. Meanwhile, Rival, an IS-7, an E-5, 2 Batchats, 2 140s, and an RU-251 of themselves.
This is definitely a map where, as far as IS-7s go, and even E-5s, this is kind of the map that I see most of those tanks on.
And it looks like right off the bat, Pub Whisper is going to go to one of the passive bushes on the one line. One of the more rather predictable spots a lot of people will see sitting up here, and actually just a little bit further than the normal bush. A lot of times we see the bush a little bit further down there in the middle of E1. However, going with a different bush, just trying to change it up a little bit, make sure it doesn't get blind fired out. So that's a little bit respectable, a little bit of a change on, a common spot. Those trying to get...
Okay, a little off-roading there for Chase.
Chase just having to show off his moves, just jump over the train cars there. Once again, that was another thing that was recently discovered because of the change in physics around 6 months ago now. You can just hit that at full speed and jump over them. I've seen it done in RUs.
Who was it we saw? It was in an RU that caught like a good 40 feet of air off that. It was on Proc, and it was towards the back end right around, I want to say like J8.
I'm pretty sure that was Chase Potato
Was
as well.
it Chase?
Relatively certain it was. Then we had Blue Mini with that handbrake turn in the south that one time. He gets caught out. He got spotted.
Oh man, that killed me. Still one of my favorite moments.
Originally, because of the shot placement from Germ on him, I thought he got tracked and spun out. But watching it a second time, what happened was he handbrake turned just out of frustration and knew he was dead.
It looked like he had been. It was like the perfect timing because when he got shot is when he handbraked.
Exactly. And so at first glance, it looked like he had gotten tracked at that point, but what really happened is he was just frustrated. He knew he was dead, so he just handbraked and spun a 180. And then once he realized that he was dead for sure, he just fired up in the air in frustration.
We talked about that too when we were playing together. It was you, me, and him. I asked him, I was like, so what was going on? He's like, dude, I don't even care. I just literally, he's like, why not shoot up in the air?
Yep. However, look at all this blind fire coming out of Deja Vu, trying to find a passive tank in one of those bushes, and like I said, Pub Whisper changed up the location. He's sitting in a...
So far, it's working for him.
He was in a different bush, and he's actually moved up to that same bush I was talking about, but he's up all the way on the red line, just in a slightly different position, and so far working out. Meanwhile, Commander J does have a dead gunner, which I will take a quick look. Does he have a repair kit? Commander J is already down either a repair kit or a first aid kit. I'm going to assume it's his repair kit because his gunner's still dead. So meanwhile, and the push coming out here, they will catch out Pub Whisper.
Pub Whisper taking just such an immense amount of damage as he goes down. Focused out. Now there is only an IS-7 and an E-5. And I say only, those are actually two good tanks to be up against this force of Deja Vu.
Deja Vu need to get out of there one way or another. They can't sit here because they cannot survive this pounding. Rival are sitting in a good hold down position with good lane of fire down this one line. And as I say that, Durgil gets focused out.
Yep.
They need to just get up and over that road and get out of there because they're not in a good position.
Yeah, no one's taking a few shells here. Now, as is Flag, he's constant fire of the 140s.
No, they're Deja Vu are honestly doing pretty good on the HP. They are down to tier 10.
They're chipping away currently at Flak and Unknown One.
But now the counter push is coming out of Rival. They've masked up and they're pushing down this one line. This could end the game in a matter of seconds.
Could go down. Wait a second, Change is picking off Unknown One. Flak has now decided to slow down as the bat shots of Commander J and Executives are just flying down the one line. They should be able to find Wally with here in just a moment. Wait, he's still not lit. There it is. Social Flaws. 1224. 1,600 damage. One shot away from death. There it is. Flak is going to find the shot in the E5.
Commander J is going to push over on Wally.
Commander J just gets taken out.
Pushes over on Wally, but the rest of Deja Vu in a good position to punish him. However, now Flak can start to work this ridge against Wally, and I don't see him living for too much longer. However,
he's going to try to hide behind
the corpse of Commander J. He's
Commander
using the back
J.
chat corpse to stay alive.
Look at the RU-251 right now of Chase Potato. He has been working their flank this entire time. I'm very curious to see what his damage done is after this.
If Deja Vu want to close out this round, they need to try to find the picks onto Change and Wally Whiff quickly and get those extra guns down. Or excuse me, if Rival want to get into this fight. However, right now, if Deja Vu just want to close it out, they need to find that kill onto Flak. Getting that extra gun advantage right now or evening up the guns could
Would
Could
be
decide
great,
this
but
match pretty
Executus
quickly.
is going to find Wally. And he's going to back up. Nice play from Executus. It was a risk. It wasn't a huge risk, but it was a risk nonetheless. He found the shot. He nailed it. And he evened up the guns. Still, though, Flak is one shot away from being taken out of the battle. Change is now one shot, was two. And Executus going to take out Change. Great stuff from him.
And finally, Harmless finds
does
Flak.
find Flak, though. And Coffee Thief finds Harmless. It is now a 2-on-3 in favor of Rival.
So just like I said, Rival found the quick 2 kills on those low HP
And
tanks,
that's
and they
exactly
were able to
what
get
they
back
needed
into
to do.
this.
And it was Executus, honestly, with a great play on both.
So taking the little opportunity they needed to claw back into this. And this is something that we've really been hard on Rival so far this season, is the ability to close out rounds. And for the first time in a long
They're
while,
not struggling at all. They should be able to do this.
despite being down, they were able to find a way into this, and they should be able to clean this up.
There it is. Executus has done some work this battle. Quite a bit of work. In fact, let me see exactly how much work he has done. He came in huge for his team, though, 100%. There it is. Executus doing 4,200 damage with 3 kills in his bat chat. Coffee Thief right back. Wow. Nice stuff. I'm impressed.
Yep, Rival, I like the defense there. However, I don't want to call it a standard defense, but just a very simple defense, nothing new. Deja, it's very hard to break.
It worked.
Don't get me wrong, it's pretty difficult to break. However, it's not anything mind-boggling new or crazy. They just ran it very well. They sat passive down there. They got some early intel, and they just kind of fell back into that back corner up at A1 or A2 along the river, the bend in the road right there. And Deja Vu, first mistake was trying to blindly push down there, even though they knew that there was some sort of tank sitting there in the bush, and Pub Whisperer was just able to constantly keep them lit, and they did take a good bit of damage. When they finally committed, yes, they got him down. However, they left themselves in a situation where they couldn't really leave without taking damage. They couldn't push forward without taking damage, and they couldn't back out with taking any damage, which is why I said they just needed to go up and over and get into the middle ground.
Right.
They just needed to get out of there. They were going to take damage in some manner. There was no way out of it at that point. But they took a little bit too long.
Deja Vu was doing a good job of trying to claw back in there. The problem is Flak didn't go down until the tank lineups were pretty much tied up. So, good stuff to Rival. This is again refreshing to see. We saw this once before. I hope this becomes a new trend with the team. But Deja Vu's not out of it yet either.
Yeah, and like I said, so essentially at that point they were nice and tight. Once Deja Vu committed, trying to kill Pub Whisper, it was Rival that got off good early damage, and then I liked the play there. They didn't stay stagnant like we were talking about earlier with some of the other teams.
Right.
Holding that kind of stagnant defense where you keep the same tanks in the same places the whole time, just hoping that your crossfires just kind of hold out.
Yeah.
This time what they did is they got the early damage, and then once they realized they had an opportunity, they took advantage of it. They masked up their tanks, they pushed down the one line, and yes, they got a little bit sloppy around the bull.
Sure.
However, the trade did work out, and obviously Rival were able to claw back into this. Now
again, Executus came in huge for Rival there.
Now they lost a little bit more of they should have on that push. However, in the long run, they managed to get in there. They managed to get some guns down, force Deja Vu into the low ground, and they were just able to work them down from there. They were able to get those kills on those free tanks, and they worked out for them. Now looking at the lineup we saw at a Rival last match day versus Apex. 3 STBs, 2 bat chats, a TVP, and an RU-251. A lineup that says they are going to go for that very aggressive mid play. Meanwhile, Deja Vu, a 113, 4 140s, a bat chat, and an RU-251. So essentially at this point, what I would expect out of Rival is some variation of peeking this middle ridge at F5, trying to find some sort of pick onto one of these tanks that's maybe caught out. At this point, it looks like it'll be Chase Potato, who is going to be the poor unfortunate soul. And let's see what happens from there. And it looks like they're actually set up to just jump over the train tracks and stack that 2-cap if they see the right things. Now what that trigger is, will depend upon the team.
Would be in a good situation if they do notice that, but again, it's very difficult. Harmless.
So great little pincer here. What they're doing is they're pushing with a couple of their tanks up the 7 line. They're forcing that bad chat out, and the rest of the STBs are working this middle ridge, ready to shoot him in the middle here.
Harmless is just catching hands right now.
Now, I don't like this out of Rival just because their guns are so split. However, they did get some early damage. So what we really need to keep an eye on here is what their second move is. If they stay separated like this, it could work against them. But if they have some sort of second plan to either regroup or reposition, maybe get over the train tracks onto the 7-line side, they may be able to make something work.
Lots of damage coming into onto the Wally Whiff and a lot of bounces as well. Executus potentially one shot away depending on the roll of the tank. E63 just took a shell. Deja Vu is by far the bleeding worse here.
Yep, it's only a 700, 800 HP deficit right now for Deja Vu. As I say that, it gets a little bit larger. However, there is no cap pressure coming out of Rival, so I'm not entirely sure why Deja Vu are trying to make the plays they are at this point in time. If there was anything on cap, then yeah, I could understand it a little bit. However, there's just no cap pressure right now, so there's no real pressure for them to force one sort of response or another, especially with them knowing that they have some tanks left on the 5-line.
And Deja Vu is rotating all of their tanks to the south, aside from one lone Batchat and 251. They're also, actually I like this, they're also leaving a 113 and a 140 sitting there around the E and F line, right there on the mini-map.
So what they'll do is they'll use...
Where they have a really good spread as far as defense is concerned.
So what they'll do is they'll leave this 113 and this 140 here on the high ground to keep the tanks in the back suppressed. And what they'll do is they'll move in with these other mediums down to the south, and they'll start finding these angles on these isolated STBs. This is what I was talking about how I don't like the tanks being separated. These STBs are on one side of the train tracks while the rest are on the other. And then creating an isolation on this pair of STBs isn't necessarily too difficult right now. However, looking at the HP for Deja Vu, they do have 2 one-shotter tanks, essentially, and Mile Putin's only on 1,000, so they don't have a whole lot of HP to make this happen.
Ooh, Executus needs to be careful. He only has 1 shot left to give. Oh, and I believe he put it in the dirt. Change almost with the kill shot. Not quite. And there it is. Executus goes down.
Chase Potato will be lit. I would not be surprised if we see E63 pop over the train tracks and try to empty his clip into Chase. However, Chase does get close enough to find an angle and light Pub Whisper, so they know exactly who's on cap and where. However, it's going to be up to Chase to get the reset right now because there's just no one else in position.
No, there's not. Only 10 seconds left.
The first shot of Chase misses.
Oh no, Wally Whiff taking out flak. 5 seconds left on the clock. 4, 3, 2. Oh, and there's a reset.
Not the one they need, though.
Not the big one. This is going to be an all-out brawl if they don't get this. And there's another one in 1 second. Oh my goodness.
They can still do this. They have more guns alive. The HP is roughly even. They can still finish this game out.
So many trades. Unknown one. Commander J now change onto Unknown one. Dergil is in the middle of a fight. Change is coming to try to save him. Tries to stop in front of him. And there goes Dergil.
However, they will trade out Commander J, and it's just going to be up to E63.
And that is going to do it. Wow. Rival was literally a second away. 1 second away from taking that. Twice. 1 second away twice. I know it looks like I'm flashing numbers, but that was intensely close.
Very close. Chase did exactly what he needed to. Got in there, got some resets. His first shot didn't hit the tank he really wanted to hit. What they did is they moved some of the tanks that didn't have as many cap points, if any, in front of that little RE-251 who had a majority of the cap points. So even if they got shot, they didn't reset the cap all the way. Each tank, if you have one tank on there, he gets 50.
Which is exactly what happened, yeah.
Yeah, so if you have one tank on there and he gets half of the cap pressure, and then 2 more get on there after that, he'll still have the 50% plus whatever he gains from that point on. So if you keep him safe and don't let him get reset, then all of a sudden the cap pressure is still going to be going, even if they shoot the other tanks to get those resets. So they had to work a little bit extra harder to find that shot onto Pub Whisperer. Very fortunate that they eventually were able to find it. Commander J doing what he could to block Chase and just not able to really keep him from being reset. And at that point on, the momentum was in favor of Deja Vu.
And there you see Chase doing 1,100 damage. Dude, who cares? Because he saved the game for Deja Vu.
Yeah, definitely. So not able to really do a whole lot. 1,100 is respectable out of a tier 8. And certainly more than Pub Whisperer at 400. But, you know, he got in there. He got those resets that he needed. He
did what needed to be done.
He bought his team the extra few seconds they needed to stay into that game, and they ended up finishing it out. And once again, Rival in a positive position with a lead in a good position, dropping around.
Yeah, but it wasn't like it wasn't terrible. Okay.
It was a good effort. I do like what I see out of Rival. But just a few little things that they kind of left open. Once again, if you know that you're going to go for some sort of 2-cap pressure like that, why leave the STBs on the other side? You know, they didn't have any sort of game plan. They got caught out, and those tanks were the only thing. Now, I get what they're going for as far as those tanks were screening, but they just weren't able to really stay alive for long, and they got isolated.
All right, well, let's see what Rival can do on the next map in this series.
Steps, the most open map in the league. The attacking team appears near the rocks at the bottom of the map, and the defending team starts at the top. Bases are located near the railway and on the green. The best way to control them is to use the lowland near the second base. The attacking team usually begins the attack from the rocks and the railway, but sometimes they can attack through the green. Teams often drag vehicles from flank to flank, so both teams usually pick light vehicles with a good camouflage rating, but sometimes use tanks with a strong turret and even SPGs.
So both teams opting for a Lorraine 155-51, the tier 8 artillery.
Okay.
Interesting pick there out of both teams. Meanwhile, Deja Vu, 2 113s, an STB, a 140, and 2 bat chats. Meanwhile, Rival, 2 140s, 3 bat chats, a TVP, and the Lorraine 155 of their own. And a very aggressive opening play coming out of Deja Vu on defense, pushing hard along the train tracks here. However, they are splitting up a little bit. And it should be Wallywiff that gets spotted out first. And it's actually Social Flaws who pops up a little bit too far in the train tracks and takes 1,100 damage.
Lots of damage.
It's a lot of HP.
Odd Social Flaws.
And now they know the gig's up. They know where their tanks are. And Rival are just going to mass up, and I would not be surprised to see them dump over here.
Ooh, 2 bounces off of Wallywiff.
And the push is just
Social Flaws gets deleted.
Shots going back and forth.
Oh, this is a brawl looking to be in favor of Rival if they can clean up their Gilles here in a moment. Wallywiff is coming around the corner. Now the whole team of Deja Vu is pushing down the A-line as that Lorraine 155-51 is still sitting, trying to get as many shots as he can, although there won't be too many. Rival is still trying to work these angles. They definitely have the tank advantage as it's 3, but Unknown One is on 2 HP. E63 is on 198, so those are 2 one-shot tanks right there. And Wallywiff is making a very aggressive play into 3 tanks. He should go down here, and there it is. Oh, Chase Potato finding Executus in the 155, but honestly, the impact of that kill really isn't that huge.
A couple of quick picks for Deja Vu could put them back into this. However, they need to find a known one in E63 pretty much instantly, or they're not really going to have too much more of a window back into this match.
No, and you could argue it's really 5 versus 2, as I'm not even really counting the 155s.
Yep, they will spot Commander J. Chase is repositioning right now.
And Flack should get a shot, at least one more off. Oh, and Flack takes out My Little Putin. That must have been with the help of Pub Whisperer.
A nice big shot from that Lorraine, finding Cotton Thief, not enough to finish him off. And Chase is just going to bail out, head to the south, try to buy his team a little bit more time to talk. However, Coffee Thief will come over the top.
Rival is up 4-3. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. And it's not that I hate Deja Vu. That's not the case at all. But it's just really refreshing to see Rival play like this.
Yep, and don't get me wrong. They've been working very hard so far this season. They feel confident in what they're doing. It's just things haven't quite come together so far. They've been dropping a lot of points unnecessarily. And so they're finally starting to just kind of put things together. Now, if I still have a bone to pick, it's just how slow a lot of these pieces are coming together. It's taken them till, the second round robin. A lot of these matches still look pretty slow and kind of not entirely positive on what they want to do. Yeah, it's polished, so it's still just a little bit rough. Now, they are winning 4-3.
Yeah.
So you can't knock it. They do have a lead. The question is can they close out this series right now, get this last win on steps, and put this to bed? They will have a defense on steps, which you would have to think typically a defense is favored. Obviously, we just watched Deja Vu lose a defense. However,
sure,
running a more standard defense, you'd have to like their shot.
And I got to say, this victory would be great for Rival because of two reasons. As the damages, you guys can check out My Little Putin and Change doing the most. But Commander J, Coffee Thief, and Flack really did quite a bit of work for their team, 24, 22, and 1900. What I was trying to say is this is huge for Rival in two ways. The first is obviously they will be beating a team that beat them 5-2, which is Deja Vu. The second is that if they can finish this now, here, in regulation, that's 3 points that they desperately need going forward into this round robin.
Certainly. And, you got to like their shot going into this last match. Defense on steps. I know I'm saying this right after Deja Vu lose a defense. However, I still feel this map's pretty defensively sided overall.
Sure.
Now, running a creative defense, trying to change things up like Deja Vu just did, maybe not the best idea, but you can see what they're going for. Just kind of got picked apart. Social Flaws losing 1,200 HP right off the get-go made things a lot easier for Rival to understand, all right, well, we can pick this guy off with one solid volley out of 4 tanks. 4 tanks, I'll shoot the same target for his remaining HP. He's done.
That's an Alpha Strike, baby.
Yep. So focus fire, just come up and over. All the guns line up. Alpha Strike him. He's done. So, and that was just that momentum, that opening they needed. Now, you could argue Deja Vu gave it to him, so they gave him that opportunity. But good on Rival to capitalize on it.
Yeah, that's, you know what? If someone makes a mistake, it would have been bad if Rival didn't capitalize and punish that. So great stuff to them. Still recognizing situations where they can take advantage. And tonight, for the most part, they have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And going into it, we are on to battle number 8. Rival are up 4-3. Can they close out this series right now? Can they get themselves a huge 3 points, which you have to imagine could help separate themselves from the other bottom 3 teams here coming up going into the online playoffs?
Right, and Deja Vu is going to bring 3 140s, a 113, 2 bat chats, and a 251. Rival going to bring an E5, okay, and then a 140, a bat chat, 3 bat chats, a TVP, and a 251. So a little more burst heavy on a Rival side. They are defending.
Both teams dropping their artillery, deciding to go with the RU 251. Deja Vu making a very aggressive push through the 2 line up on top of the field, just trying to get across to the north as fast as they can. And a much more traditional lineup, or setup, coming out of Rival. Leaving that E5 just kind of sitting there at B7 in the hold down. Moving the rest of the tanks further towards the south. The RU-251 is pushing down the 0 line, getting the eyes down there, making sure there's no trap sitting there or random tanks waiting out and around. And the rest of the mediums, for the most part, just chilling out at E8. And as I say that, it does look like there is a boost attempt going on. Executus that's actually going to get up on top of that boost. He had a little bit of help from Commander J. So now he is up on that A8 boost. He's going to get pretty firmly in there. So this is a very difficult defense for Deja Vu to break. This is where they're really going to have to show that they've earned that 4th place spot. To really challenge for those top couple of spots, this sort of basic defense out of Rival is something that these teams just have to know or have an idea on how to crack. It's not easy. However,
but it's not perfect.
This is what separates the good from the best.
The big dogs, you know what I'm saying, from the little pups.
Exactly. And
That was a terrible analogy. I'm sorry.
An interesting setup coming here out of Deja Vu. They've rotated a lot of their tanks to the south, just leaving that 113, the 140, and the RE-251 up in the north. Now, if they can hold south and start some cap pressure going, they can control that field, and they can really make it hard for them to reset. Now, the easy play for Rival is just to stack up all their tanks and push over A6, A5 into the north, get the free resets while the tanks are down the south. Whether or not that'll happen, we'll have to see.
All right, a little bit of cap pressure starting here for Deja Vu. It is just going to be a 251. In fact, the 251 of Chase Potato, and this is just to kind of get a little bit of a rise out of Rival to see exactly what they're going to do and respond with.
So the setup out of Deja Vu, what it's set up to do essentially is to have the cap pressure going on up here, but with all these tanks positioned right here, they take control of this ridge right here. Now, why you ask controlling this ridge when you're capping the one cap is important, and it's pretty simple. It's just the lanes that you were able to control. A lot of teams like to set up tanks here, like they're doing, to get the resets across the field. They can shoot that RE-251, and the C5 is also in a decent spot. The most common spot these tanks will go to get the lights on that RE-251 is this little ridge right here. If you control this south, you have a free line of sight straight up into there. You also have free shots onto this ridge, making them have to back off, and you can really do a lot to cover that RE-251. However, like I said, the easy thing, if you're Rival, to do right now, if you recognize that a majority of the tanks are committed to the south, is group up all your tanks, push across here, get up into here, you have free resets, and they have to back off. Meanwhile, as I say that, they do pull the RE-251 off cap.
I wonder if it was Coffee Thief again.
Would not surprise me one bit.
No.
For those that watched the top 5 earlier, multiple back-to-back blind shots in different spots.
Consecutive, yeah.
It
was nuts.
It's mind-boggling if you think about it. And the 113 is actually moved into position 2 screen for Deja Vu. And this is pretty much what you have to do to break this defense, is you have to cause some sort of cap pressure that's going to force a response out of the defense. You need to make them move and pull into your guns.
Do you actually remember who it was that won on this exact same side and setup on this map?
I am not absolutely positive, to be honest. However, I probably could find out.
All right, so a south play is going to be coming out of Deja Vu here. They should be able to catch out the 251 of Pub Whisper in just a moment here. Wait a second. Lots of damage coming onto Harmless, and down he goes to Commander J. Shots being found onto Pub Whisper, but shots being traded as well. Commander J is trying to run for his life. He did do a good bit amount of damage if he is to go down now. Oh, and the auto fire extinguisher saves his life.
And now this is where Rival need to figure out what they're going to do. This push is coming through the south. It's putting a lot of pressure on them. However, the cap pressure is down to 30 seconds, so they need to make a play to get the cap.
And My Little Putin is going to take down Pub Whisper finally in that 251.
And at this point, they aren't really in position to punish these guns. They're going to push across to the north. And Chase is just going to get up and off the cap, keep his HP. Smart play there out of him. However, that 113 social flaws is going to be a little bit isolated, so he's going to need to quickly
this is going to be
get
a
in position to
gross
reset him.
overmatch if they realize it. Social Flaws should be able to get a shot on Unknown One's bat shot in the back of the tank in the rear. Oh, but he doesn't, and now it's 3 tanks on Social Flaws. E63 is going to go ahead and push over with that TVP. He's going to get his full clip off, and he should do a good amount of damage. As Unknown One now helps.
Wow,
look at the burst! E63 gets destroyed.
And Chase Potato, or My Little Putin, picks up the kill in that back chat.
3 minutes left, though, on the clock. Deja Vu still need to either take out every tank of Team Rival or they need to get on the cap and put the pressure on now.
With Change and Durgill coming in here relatively full HP, you would have to like their chances at cleaning out Unknown One and Flak pretty quickly. If they can get those two down, it's a pretty easy path from there on. With Executus still up on that A0 boost, he's not going to have the best shots towards these 140s.
Oh, but they've got to be nice shot, landing it onto My Little Putin. And one more, and he will be going down. But Durgill is going to go over and clean up Unknown One, as Chase Potato's still taking a lot of damage.
And the 140s trade out that E5 and the Batchat pretty much simultaneously, exactly what they needed to do. And now it's just down to Coffee Thief and Executus. Executus in a full health Batchat still up on the boost up there. So his HP really isn't in this fight.
He still could do damage, though.
So here's the thing is, Deja Vu need to get in a position to screen, and they need to get cap pressure going, and they need to take those other two guns out of the fight. Executus won't really have good reset shots from up there. He'll have some blind shots at best because it's out of draw range. So he might be able to get off a couple.
The problem is there's 3 tanks for Deja Vu that are all one shot.
Now, if Rival kill this game out correctly, what they'll do is they'll burn the clock, they'll let the cap build up, and then they'll push in one tank into the position of where he guaranteed gets the lights. Even if he does get destroyed, there'll be other guns ready to get the resets. And if they can get the resets and then keep Executus alive, they could close out this series. Executus missing his first few shots on the change, though.
Oh, and there's another one. Nothing. That's not what he wanted with that clip.
And now here's the play. Coffee Thief is going to push over towards the north. They need to screen him before he can get the resets. 13 seconds left on the cap.
Ooh,
And he doesn't get the reset.
And that's it.
We are going to go to overtime.
Executus with no shots. Nothing he can do. And Deja Vu going to tie it up 4-4. Well, I got to say, either way, Rival has been doing an exemplary job of actually not getting 5-2'd, and now they've brought it to overtime. They were in the lead, and now it is tied up 4-4. Deja Vu doing a great job of tying back up, though. Either way, Rival is playing better than we've seen them play, and this is a treat for me.
I like the play out of Deja Vu. I like the south defense. Well, south attack, really. While using the cap pressure in the north, they set up in the south. They got some tanks down for free. A little bit fortunate that Rival didn't jump on the north sooner. They definitely were a little bit disjointed for a minute where there was a little opportunity for Social Flaws to go down for basically free. However, Milo Putin pushed around, got up there where he could really cover that 113, and the guns in the south got towards that middle road just far enough to where they could really get those shots onto E63 when he pushed around, and he pretty much got evaporated after firing his clip.
Yeah, he really did. And now we see, Durgill did a lot of damage for his team, doing 3,300, and then Commander J and Coffee Thief really came in huge for Rival, but unfortunately the rest of Team Deja Vu were able to kind of scump it up with 1,700, then 16, 14, and then Chase doing 14 as well in the 251, so not bad.
So, do you remember that extremely quick round we had during battle number 4, which would have been on mines? That round that Rival just drove straight at the hill, and they Unknown One and Executus,
yes.
and they lost in about 2.5 minutes. Well, that round right there gives Deja Vu the side choice going into our overtime map of the night,
Which is Cliff. So you would think that they would choose defense.
Yeah, unless they have something very special planned to attack with, I would certainly think they'd favor defense.
Okay.
So we'll have to see what they do. We're still waiting for side choices to be confirmed, but we'll know as soon as we know. In case we didn't mention it earlier, I believe it was CD over high in overtime once again, 5-4. So interesting score from the offline match there. So once again, that match going to overtime. And looking at it, Deja Vu does pick defense.
Yep.
So that one round may be costing Rival a bit more than just that one particular round right now.
Look. Either way you look at it, at least they're getting a point. At least they didn't get shut out like they have been. They're playing slightly better right now, which is great to see.
You can see the overall game plan. They certainly have some ideas on how they're trying to execute, but just little things just taking a little bit too long to get into place. Obviously, they've picked up 4 rounds tonight, so they're not playing terribly.
Sure.
However, there's definitely a lot that could pretty easily be improved upon. A lot of these strats are very slow, and maybe part of that's by design. Let's just slow it down, make them kind of lose concentration, reappear in a lot of different places.
We've seen a lot of slow play from
and kind of
Rival
disguise
tonight,
things. But, it is working.
But to be fair, Deja Vu also tend to be slower team anyways themselves, so...
Yep. So, and then you got to think, will these sort of strats we're seeing out of Rival right now with the slow play and then just massing up late in the game, will that work against a team like Apex or Eclipse? Do you think? We've seen earlier in the season, I think it was Eclipse versus Get Flanked. Get Flanked on Runeberg was trying to open up the North Cap, and so the Get Flanked was trying everything, just appearing all over the map, showing up tanks.
Right.
And Eclipse just sat there with just a stone cold face, just staring at that A6 gap and didn't even budge once. So none of those misdirections worked then against Eclipse. Do you think any of these sort of misdirections, late game, slowing down the clock will really work?
It's hard to say because we've seen these teams take rounds on those teams before. So I don't. Generally, you would say no, but overall,
you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone's game. We are about 40 seconds away from getting into our final battle of tonight. Both teams getting a point at this point. A point at this point. Wow. Right now, this round will give one of these teams that extra 1 point over the other. So one team walks away with 2, and one team walks away with just a 1 for making it into overtime in general.
However, for Deja Vu, they're way ahead of all the bottom teams right now. So,
yeah, and for them right now, this is just trying to claw in towards that 1 and 2 spot and get that automatic bye for the regional offline finals. They're going to want that spot with Eclipse, dropping a point earlier, or an Apex. There's a little bit of a window there. They haven't got it yet, though.
All right, well, let's head into the final map of the series between Deja Vu and Rival.
Cliff, the most dynamic map in the league. Battles on Cliff always turn into desperate double-edged fights. Teams start from the same spots as they do in standard battles. The first base is located near the defender's spawn point, and the second is at the bottom of the hill. Sometimes teams split their forces and send several tanks through the 1-2 line to the left of the small hill, but usually both teams play at the center. The attacking team can send one of the tanks up to the lighthouse or behind it. Fast and quick-firing vehicles are better suited for this map, mainly medium tanks, including tanks equipped with autoloaders.
We are off into battle number 9. Lineups coming in. Deja Vu, 5 bat chats, a TVP, and an RU-251.
Okay, so this is something interesting. A Rival has decided to bring 140.
So bringing that 1 consistent tank, the 2 TVPs, the 3
like
bat chats, and the RU-251.
I like it.
And Rival are just going to take the middle, while Deja Vu runs a little bit of a split. They use the Mountain Goat to get the bat chats over towards E3. Wally getting caught out there a little
taking
bit.
damage. Pub Whisper has also taken a lot of damage, and Unknown One has taken about 1 to 2 shells here. Chase Potato, meanwhile, has dropped to half his HP.
So a little bit of even trades there.
A cute little play here. We have 2 tanks, a TVP and a 251, going down the backside of this ridge. The only tank there to really receive them is going to be the TVP, and that's a TVP to counter that in it of itself with Coffee Thief.
So he's actually in a pretty good position to get resets here. That back little dip that they're right next to there is the only spot where they can really get on that cap with any sort of cover at all. However, once they get towards where this Durgil is, the
they found Durgil.
The shots are coming out onto Social
Yeah,
Flaws.
Social Flaws. Coffee Thief is going on to Social Flaws, and Commander J and My Little Putin have been aiming towards Coffee Thief now. In response, Social Flaws might go down here. He might take out Commander J. Never mind, it's going to be Executives coming around the corner, and he's going to clean him up with none other than Executus. And now the brawl happens. Unknown One going to take out Wally Whiff. Harmless going to take out Commander J. Trades left and right. Harmless still bleeding, and the change getting a kill onto Unknown One, but he is going to go down to Flak and Pub Whisper.
And this is where bringing that 1 consistent fire tank is paying off for Rival. He can keep firing, keep things going. However, the rest of Deja Vu's tanks should be able to get into their second clip here pretty soon. So they need to hurry up and hunt them down. Durgel does have a full clip.
Shots coming out, and then E63 cleaning up harmless in the TVP. Rival is looking good to take this. Only Durgel less than half HP now, and My Little Putin left to really contest this. Just down to My Little Putin. I don't see it happening. It would be incredible if it did. He is out of shots, and Rival is gonna pick it up.
A big 2 points for them. They're
Huge.
That should move them out of last place.
Good job.
I believe
Yes.
that'll actually leave them tied because High and CD went to overtime and they're both on 11 points.